There were many crooks in the Old West who prospered in territory that law enforcement had yet to reach. Soapy Smith, a man with a violent streak and a short fuse, was one of the most successful chiselers until he wasn't. Jefferson Randolph Smith II arrived in an unsuspecting Wild West from Georgia in 1876. He was 16 when his family moved to Texas after being wiped out financially by having the misfortune of being on the Civil War's losing side. Young Smith toyed with the cowboying trade but found the occupation onerous and poorly paid. He decided cheating other people out of their cash was more to his liking than hot and dusty days in the saddle. In Fort Worth, he gathered a group of like-minded ne'er-do-wells skilled in the arts of three-card monte, the shell game, and crooked poker games. Among Smith's accomplices were Big Ed Burns, a Chicago-based gangster who headed west to avoid answering for numerous crimes, and Texas Jack Vermillion, whose odd combination of occupations included outlaw and Methodist preacher. Collectively, these scoundrels and others of their ilk were known as bunco men. Smith's gang moved from frontier town to frontier town, where it seems they were able to find an endless supply of gullible rubes. Jefferson Randolph Smith II acquired his nickname from one of his scams. He would ride into town, a suitcase stuffed with bars of soap. The con began with Smith setting up a Kaiser on a busy street corner. In the suitcase would be piles of ordinary soap wrapped in plain paper. Smooth-talking Smith would gather a crowd to watch him rewrap the bars of soap, inserting money, sometimes a dollar bill, sometimes a $100 note. He would then make a big show of mixing the bars of soap containing cash with the rest in his suitcase. Who wants to take a chance on winning $100 for a $1 bar of soap? One of the early sales would go to an accomplice who would rip the wrapping apart to reveal some money. Sales would be brisk after that, and another accomplice would win money. As the contents of the suitcase grew low, Smith would announce the elusive $100 had still not been won, and that now he would auction off the remaining bars. The value of the 5-cent cakes of soap would rise until one of Smith's helpers would outbid everyone and score the big prize. Sleight of hand or a hidden compartment in the suitcase ensured the soap with money only went to the right people. With a yippee-ki-yay, the team would catch the train for the next town and a whole fresh group of suckers. The story goes that in one town, the sheriff caught on to Smith's scam and arrested him. As he was filling out the charge sheet, the lawman forgot Smith's given name, so he wrote in Soapy instead. Smith preferred to be called Jeff. In 1876, Smith moved his gang to Denver to start building a criminal empire. The city had a relaxed attitude towards gambling, and that was a golden opportunity for Soapy and his company of grifters. He opened the Tivoli Saloon and Gambling Hall and had the grace to put a sign above the entrance that read, "Caveat emptor." For those not schooled in Latin, and that likely included everyone, the warning that they were about to be fleeced went unnoticed. While rigged poker games in the Tivoli caused grown men to cry, Soapy Smith was also running a fake stock exchange and phony diamond sales. He focused all his rackets on travelers while carefully cultivating the allegiance of Denver residents. There were gifts to the poor and donations to churches. Politicians and police were on his payroll, so Smith became the untouchable underworld boss of Denver, and the money rolled in. Then, in 1889, reformers went on a campaign to clean up the city. Some of those who protected Smith fell out of favor, and his supremacy began to weaken. Rival gangs started nibbling away at his endeavors, and his drinking and bad temper diminished his popularity. So, Soapy sold the Tivoli and decided to move to someplace where the folks weren't so persnickety about morality. In 1889, silver was discovered in the Willow Creek Canyon, right by the town of Creede. In 2 years, the population went from 600 to more than 10,000, the kind of boomtown made for con men such as Soapy Smith. He opened the Orleans Club and very quickly was the king of crime in Creede. During his brief stay in the community, Soapy acquired a large, primitive-looking figure that he buried out of town. With great fanfare, the petrified man was exhumed and put on display for those wishing to pay for a viewing. Somewhere along the way, the statue acquired the name McGinty. Then, the good burghers of Denver told Smith the reforms were going to be repealed and organized crime was once more welcome in town. He returned to Denver and took McGinty with him. He got out of Creede just in time because on June 5, 1892, most of the town, including Smith's saloon, was destroyed in a fire. The return of lawlessness was short-lived. In 1894, Davis Hanson Waite was elected governor of Colorado, and he told Denver's leaders to clean up their city, or he would do it for them. The local politicians refused Governor Waite's demands, and the militia was sent in to enforce them. Waite's force was met by a ragtag bunch under the command of Soapy Smith, now carrying the title of colonel. Fortunately, everybody calmed down, and the governor got his way, which included showing Soapy Smith the road out of town. A murder charge motivated his departure. As the rule of law crept westwards, it became increasingly difficult for people such as Soapy Smith to practice their crafts. However, the discovery of gold in Alaska was an irresistible magnet for these wandering scofflaws. Smith turned up in Skagway in 1897, pulling his shell game and three-card Monte scams. Just as he had in Denver and Creede, Smith began putting together criminal enterprise. The center of operations was Jeff Smith's parlor, which soon became known as the real City Hall. Bribes in the right places ensured immunity from prosecution, but Skagway was home to some tough men who did not like Smith's nefarious ways. In July 1898, the so-called Committee of 101 met to discuss how to run Smith and his gang out of town. Soapy showed up brandishing a Winchester rifle and was barred entry by armed guards. There was gunfire, and both Soapy and a guard lay dead on the ground. At his funeral, the officiating clergyman chose a text from Proverbs 3 as the starting point for his sermon. The way of transgressors is hard,